The 2023 NFL Draft had 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4 picks and also had 2 running backs go in the top 12. This was a pretty talented draft class, and now that we are a year and a half into these guys' careers, we can really start to see the impact from this class and how teams' futures look based on this draft class alone. 2023 marked the second straight season in which a team had both the offensive and defensive rookie of the year, as the Texans drafted quarterback CJ Stroud with the 2nd overall pick and edge rusher Will Anderson with the 3rd overall pick. This was after a year where the Jets swept the Rookie of the Year awards with Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, and needless to say, the Texans' future changed on night 1 of the 2023 NFL Draft. But they weren't the only franchise whose future changed, due in large part to this draft class. Not even close. And when you hear the phrase teams build through the draft, well, we're going to break down a couple of teams, both good and bad, as to how the 2023 NFL Draft shaped their franchise to where they are today. We will break down the thought process of each pick, what went right, what went wrong, and everything in between. And there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams were in a very tricky situation entering the 2023 draft because they were coming off of a year in which they finished 5-12 and had their big three at the time in Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald all miss significant time. Not only did they miss significant time, but even when they played, the Rams were not a good team, and for reference, Matt Stafford was just 3-6 as a starter in 2022 and was sacked 29 times in 9 games. This was particularly concerning for the future of the Rams because Stafford was 34 going on 35 and he was sacked just 30 times in 2021 when he played 17 games in the year they won the Super Bowl. The Rams' backs were against the wall because if they didn't absolutely nail the 2023 draft, then it would have been extreme uphill sledding, and there's a chance Sean McVay and Les Snead would be out of their jobs. Not for sure, of course, but there would have been a strong chance. And as you can imagine, they nailed the 2023 draft, and this was all without having their first round pick, as that was still a part of the Matt Stafford and Jared Goff trade, which happened all the way back in January of 2021. Their first selection was offensive lineman Steve Avila, and Steve has only played in a few games in 2024, but I liked what we saw from him in 2023, and I think he will be a solid starting player for the Rams for a couple of years, at minimum, by the way. The 2 other top 100 selections were used on edge rusher Byron Young and defensive tackle Kobe Turner, and both players had great rookie seasons, and both players are having solid second seasons. Having a rookie, whether it's the 3rd overall pick in Will Anderson or the 77th overall pick in Byron Young, or even the 89th overall pick in Kobe Turner, register 50 pressures in their first season is huge because of what it means for their future. If they can consistently win as a rookie, especially in the trenches, then chances are they will continue to win because they already made the initial transition from college to the NFL, and both players are having solid second seasons, and the Rams' pass rush right now is very difficult to game plan against, and that's also because they selected Jared Verse and Braden Fisk in the 2024 draft. They nailed their top 3 picks in the 2023 draft, and that's hard enough to do by itself, let alone with one of those picks not being in the first round. And to be able to have a couple of positions in the trenches taken care of is huge for the long-term development of the team because it's one, or in this case, 3 less things to worry about. And in the 5th round, they also happened to draft a wide receiver from Brigham Young, who would go on to break the rookie receiving yards record and go for over 1,400 yards in his rookie year alone by the name of Puka Nacua. For a moment, the Rams had a case to be in one of the worst situations in all of football, but they had one of the best drafts they possibly could have, and I don't think anybody saw this coming, especially without what was the number 6 overall pick at the time. They nearly beat the Lions in the playoffs last year, and it was due in large part to a 181-yard playoff debut from Puka. The end of the 2022 season was dark for the Rams, as the lone highlights were a Baker Mayfield come-from-behind win over the Raiders on Thursday night and thoroughly embarrassing the Broncos on Christmas Day. And when their backs were against the wall entering the 2023 draft, they sat back and made it happen and selected 4 good starters from this class, and not just average starters either. Puka is a great receiver, and Byron and Kobe are very, very good at what they do. And if they missed on these selections, the Rams would not be close to the team we know them as today. Unfortunately, the Panthers did not have a good 2023 draft, and it's more than just the Bryce Young trade not working out for them. There's a lot of problems with the Panthers right now, and it's more than just trading a lot for one quarterback one time. They had 5 selections in the 2023 draft class, and if you are not a devout Panthers fan, I would challenge anybody. Maybe you can get the second round pick, but I would challenge anybody to name any of their other 4 draft picks from the 2023 class, and the one reason that you would probably be able to name one of their picks was because he was recently traded, and that was second round pick Jonathan Mingo. Now, we'll get to more Bryce in a minute, but the one problem that I have with the Panthers 2023 draft class was kind of forcing the Jonathan Mingo selection at pick 39 and hoping that he would work out because he is a top 40 pick, and I never thought the value aligned with Mingo being the 5th receiver drafted, and that was one pick that I really didn't like from the start. Now, of course, whenever you draft a receiver in the top 40, and if you draft a quarterback in the first round, you are obviously going to sit there and think, okay, let's positively think, these guys will grow together. Yes, there's obviously going to be growing pains, and there was a lot of growing pains for Bryce Young and the Panthers in 2023, but maybe there will be a brighter future in 2024. I mean, Jonathan Mingo had 43 receptions in his rookie year. Hopefully he could build on that. Unfortunately, he did not build on that, and again, the Panthers right now are a bad franchise, not just because they haven't drafted well and because they gave up a 2024 first-round pick and even a 2025 second-round pick and even former 1,000-yard receiver DJ Moore, but there's been a lot of bad drafting going on in Carolina for several years, and even when they select the right player in JC Horn is not on the field anywhere close to as consistent as Panthers fans and Panthers front office members would like. So it's been a very up and down past couple of years with a lot more downs than ups. But one thing that I will say about the Panthers front office that I don't know how many people would say, but I truly respect them for swinging the bat for Bryce Young and going for broke and seeing what would happen when they go up and try and trade for who they think is going to be their franchise quarterback. And one thing that I also want to be remembered is it has came out since the draft happened that the Texans also had Bryce Young as their number 1 quarterback. Having Bryce Young as the number 1 quarterback was what a lot of people had. Not just 40% of people, not 50% of people, but more than 50% of people had Bryce Young as their number 1 pick in the 2023 draft process. I was one of them. If you had CJ Stroud as your number 1 quarterback, you were not necessarily the outlier because it wasn't like a 1 in 100 type scenario, but it wasn't as common as you think. It really wasn't 50-50. It was more like 30-70 or maybe even less than that. The point is Bryce Young was the consensus number 1 quarterback in the 2023 draft. So again, I truly respect the Panthers for going up and getting him, but after Bryce Young, the picks weren't good either, and that's kind of what really stings for the Panthers in the present day. As we mentioned, Jonathan Mingo obviously didn't work out. I'm glad they got a 4th round pick for him. I honestly don't know how they got a 4th round pick, and they technically also gave up a 7th round pick to get the 4th round pick, but I really don't know how they convinced Jerry Jones to give them a 4th round pick for the player Jonathan Mingo is. Nonetheless, they acquired some draft capital for him, but they also selected edge rusher DJ Johnson, and he's not been on the field as much as you would like for a former 3rd round pick, and that's kind of a problem because the Panthers edge rushing group is one of the worst in the league, and that's kind of a common theme with the Panthers as their roster overall right now is not good all around, not just at the quarterback position of course, but it's not good at several positions, and if DJ Johnson, who was already a 25-year-old rookie, can't get on the field now in his 2nd year, then you can pretty much assume that he's not going to be a productive player for the Panthers. They selected North Carolina State guard Chandler Zavala in the 4th round, and Chandler had a really tough rookie season, and I think that's kind of an understatement, and there was one rep in particular against Micah Parsons where it was a definite welcome to the NFL moment. They had one other draft pick, which was Jamie Robinson, and Jamie's contributed on special teams, but he really hasn't cracked the defensive lineup, and again, this defense isn't great, and if he's not going to crack the defensive lineup, I don't think he will, although special teams aces aren't bad, and Jamie certainly isn't a special teams ace, but he at least contributes somewhat on special teams, and when you have a 5-man draft class of Bryce Young, Jonathan Mingo, DJ Johnson, Chandler Zavala, who isn't even playing in year 2, too, and the Panthers also went out and spent over $100 million in guards and free agencies, and that kind of shows the rookie year that not only Chandler Zavala had, but the rest of the interior offensive line, and then Jamie Robinson, who kind of contributes on special teams. That's where the 2023 Panthers draft class is, and that is kind of how you mess up a franchise for the next couple of years. They really didn't get any contribution at any one position, aside from occasional special teams plays from Jamie Robinson, and if that is your entire draft class, along with a quarterback who has disappointed since being drafted number 1 overall, that's a big reason why the Panthers are where they are today. And I wish the best for Bryce, but the 2024 Panthers, in terms of where they are now, are set back by, in large part, to the 2023 draft class, and even a couple of draft classes prior to that, but 2023 was a big one for the Panthers. And now, a quick word from our sponsor. The football season is heating up, and if you're as dedicated to your football team as I am, you've got to check out my partners, DraftKings Sportsbook. With options to bet on your favorite team, player props, and more, there's something for everyone. And right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. And I'll repeat that because it's a pretty insane deal. New customers who bet just $5 will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly, and that's something to celebrate this football season. And all you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code ANALYSIS. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. But football season is heating up, and if you're like me and you watch football every weekend and your Sunday revolves around football, why not spice it up and give it a shot? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code ANALYSIS, and a big thank you to DraftKings, an official partner of the NFL, for sponsoring today's video. The Jags 2023 draft was one where I looked at even as it was happening in real time and simply asked what was their plan heading into the draft. This team had 13 selections in the 2023 draft, and they had 6 of those 13 picks go in the 6th round or later, so I'm not going to kill the 240th overall pick in Derek Parrish and ask why he hasn't done anything, because any player after pick 200 is really a dart throw and usually a depth piece at most. But the first 7 selections in this draft were all in the 5th round or earlier, including 3 top 100 picks. They selected Oklahoma's Anton Harrison with the 27th overall pick, and this was after they traded back with the Bills so they could go up and acquire tight end Dalton Kincaid. I didn't have a problem with the Harrison selection, as I am all for protecting your franchise quarterback, and especially in Trevor's case, as they were coming off of a year in which they won a playoff game, and Trevor had the best half season of his career, which was highlighted during the Baltimore game and the second half of the Chargers playoff game. They traded back and still acquired the player they wanted. Great, good for them. Harrison hasn't been great as a first-round pick, and I have been critical of Anton at times, but there are far worse things to gripe about with this class, and it's really every pick aside from Anton Harrison. They selected Penn State tight end Brenton Strange in the 2nd round with the 61st overall pick, and this was a pick I hated from the minute it was made. A little personal background, I am a Penn State fan, and while it's nice to see players from your favorite college get drafted, I was shocked when the Brenton Strange pick was announced. I remember thinking during his final year at Penn State that I liked Brenton as a collegiate player, and I was hoping he would be a 5th or 6th round pick, and hopefully for his sake, stay in the NFL for 6 or 7, maybe 8 years, and get as much money as he can while he is in his physical prime. But when they selected him at the end of the 2nd round, my jaw dropped, and to date he has played in 24 games and has just 25 receptions. I'm not getting into the revisionist history of how they should have selected Sam Laporta, who was selected at the top of the 2nd round, but I liked Tucker Kraft and Darnell Washington a lot more than I liked Brenton Strange as a prospect, and this was after a year in 2022 where Evan Ingram was coming off of a 73 catch season. I really disliked the value on Strange, and I recently went back and looked at a few scouting reports pre-draft, and he was around a late 4th round grade. The value is off, and he hasn't played well in over a year and a half. They then drafted Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round, and I liked Bigsby as a prospect, and after a brutal rookie season, he is playing a lot better in year 2, credit where it's due, but I was kind of shocked by this one also because of the value. I liked Devon Achane a lot more than I liked Bigsby, and he was selected 4 spots prior to Tank. They, of course, had selected Travis Etienne in the 1st round back in 2021, and I was simply surprised by the Bigsby pick. Ironically, the Rams selected Kobe Turner immediately after Tank Bigsby, Bigsby, and the Jags would go on to draft an interior defensive lineman in the second round of the 2024 draft in Mason Smith. They selected Ventrell Miller in the 4th round, and this was another pick I didn't understand the value, although Ventrell has played better than I thought he would for where he was selected, and Tyler Lacey has been below average when he's played. I didn't think the value aligned with really any of their picks in rounds 2 through 4, and there's a reason the Jags are not a good football team. It's not strictly because of the 2023 draft, but the lack of production they receive routinely from their drafts is pretty telling, and we're seeing this in a big way just a year and a half later. Winning the Week 18 game in the 2022 season was probably one of the biggest wins in Texans franchise history because it allowed them to have the number 2 overall pick and for them to draft CJ Stroud at number 2 overall. They also had a bonus as they traded up from number 12 to go up and get Will Anderson at number 3, and anytime you can have your quarterback and edge rush in the same draft, let alone at picks 2 and 3 in the same draft class, you are setting yourself up for future success. Now, we know all about the rookie contracts, and we would expect for CJ and Will Anderson to both receive hefty contract extensions when the time comes, but for now, the Texans are in a good rookie window with both players. And obviously those two alone in a single draft would be a home run, but they also drafted Juice Scruggs at the end of the 2nd round, and Juice has been a fine center for the Texans, and I know CJ's been battered around at points in 2024, but it really hasn't been due to Juice Scruggs. It's been other parts along the offensive line, but Juice himself has been fine, and like we mentioned during the Rams portion of the video, whenever you have an interior offensive line or defensive lineman, really anywhere in the trenches, where you can just say, hey, go to work, we don't have to worry about replacing you this offseason, that is such a relief to the front office, knowing that that's not another position they have to fill or another hole they have to fill entering the offseason, whether it's in the later rounds of the draft, whether it's in a $1 or $2 million guy in free agency. The point is, Juice Scruggs is going to be a starter for Houston for the next couple of years. They also drafted Tank Dell in the 3rd round, and Tank is a really solid receiver who had over 700 yards in his rookie year before his season came to an end due to a broken leg. Tank has been a really good contributor, and obviously when they traded for Stephon Diggs, his numbers were going to be limited in year 2, and unfortunately Stephon tore his ACL, and Nico Collins also missed some time. But the point is Tank was probably never going to be a 1,000-yard receiver in year 2, but anytime you can have solid production out of a 3rd round pick, it's a really good draft pick, and especially like we mentioned with CJ and Will Anderson right now, anytime you can have that solid production on a rookie scale contract, that is huge for the front office when it comes to managing salaries, and I do expect Tank to eventually be a 1,000-yard receiver. Not consistent, of course, but I think he'll clear it at least once in his career. But they also drafted linebacker Henry To'oTo'o in the 5th round, and this was a classic case, to me at least, where it was a player that was entirely overthought, and there's players that fall through the cracks every year, and Kobe Turner was also one of them for the Rams, but I thought Henry To'oTo'o was the definition of a solid linebacker, and a guy who is probably not going to make the insane highlight reel plays, and a guy that everybody in the country is going to know, a household name. But I thought To'oTo'o would be a really solid role player, and he's really stepped up in year 2. And actually, during the 2024 Texans team preview, I had fellow YouTuber Brett Coleman on as a guest for the team preview, and we each had a breakout player, and mine was Henry To'oTo'o, and I thought he was going to be good from the beginning of this year, and he's been a really, really solid player. And anytime you can have 5 key contributors, and key contributors is kind of an understatement there because obviously CJ Stroud is a franchise quarterback and Will Anderson is a franchise pass rusher and Juice Scruggs is a starting center, but anytime you can have 3 starters and then Tank Dell and then Henry To'oTo'o on top of it, you are hitting a grand slam as a front office for your draft class. And as we know, the Texans completely changed the trajectory of their franchise due in large part to their 2023 draft class. The Detroit Lions were already on the way up as they finished 9-8 in 2022, and they won several games in the back half of the season, and their future was already looking bright, and then they really had the cherry on top when they selected both Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell in the 1st round. And believe it or not, this may seem like a long time ago, Lions fans, I know you know where I'm going with this, but there was a lot of pushback when they selected Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell in the 1st round, and specifically Gibbs because they had the 6th overall pick and they traded back. So there was a lot of pushback of, if you were going to take a running back in the first round in the top 12 picks, why not just stay at pick 6 and take Bijan Robinson? And I personally loved the Jahmyr Gibbs pick at the time, and I thought the duo of him and David Montgomery was going to be a great running back duo, and I'd be lying if I said I thought it was going to be this good, but I was really excited for the duo of both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And in the second round, they selected Sam Laporta and Brian Branch, and left hand up, as you know, right as I was on the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, I did not like the Sam Laporta pick at all at the time, because I thought they drafted an inferior prospect to the Raiders' Michael Mayer, and for as right as the Jahmyr Gibbs prediction was, the Sam Laporta was equally as wrong, so credit Brad Holmes where it's due, and they went 4 for 4 with their top 4 selections, and after that they didn't receive a whole lot of contribution, but when you have 4 top 45 picks, it really doesn't matter what the rest of the class is. Technically, Hendon Hooker was their 3rd round pick at pick 69, and I doubt he's ever going to play anything of note, especially now that Jared Goff signed a contract extension, but it is nice to have what you think is a viable backup option if the worst case scenario happens. But when your top 4 picks are Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, who had a tremendous rookie season, and of course Brian Branch, who is one of the more underrated players in all of football, that really sent them from a good team to a great team, and ultimately the team that I think will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. And if they didn't draft those guys, I don't think they would represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year, because those guys are all big difference makers, and especially Gibbs with the running back duo with him and David Montgomery. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know your favorite 2023 draft class or least favorite 2023 draft class below, and please like and subscribe if you did, as it helps the channel tremendously. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.